If you watched the videos 6, 7, and 8, you've heard a lot about the racial wealth gap and many different interpretations of what that means. In this video, I'm going to share with you my experience and abilities to take advantage of uh, real estate ownership, which is as stated, about 60% of the middle class wealth. And in my time, back in the 60s and 70s, I graduated from Seattle University in 1970. And some of the phenomenon in that era served well for me to be able to take advantage of the real estate market and the values of real estate. As an example, we came to Los Angeles from Seattle after graduating. I had a job offer about 6 months before graduation, which was a pretty good offer at that time. It was about $10,200 a year, which sounds like poverty today, but in those days it was a good amount of money. So we got an apartment in an area in Los Angeles, which was a pretty good area. We had a child, so that was kind of a impediment to getting an apartment, but we did get one in a children's building. We paid $175 a month for a two-bedroom apartment. Sounds crazy, isn't it? But that's what it was in those days. And the people that we lived with, all the different apartment dwellers in that building, were somewhat upscale, and they talked about buying a house. We all talked about buying a house, but they thought the prevailing opinion was that it would take 5 years to save up money to buy a house in those days. Well, we came upon the newspaper advertisements for buying a house under the FHA terms. In those days, today I think the rate is 3.5% as a down payment, which is much different than a conventional loan. A conventional loan is usually 20% down and 80% financing. Um, and 3.5% is a big difference. But you're buying a house, which is we call a starter house. We bought a little house in Reseda, California. We lived in the west end of Los Angeles at the time, and to the other tenants in the building that we lived in amazement, they thought, oh, you can't buy a house until at least you're 5 years down the road. Well, they had, the latest furniture, which they paid $4,000 or $5,000 for in those days, which was consuming up a large portion of their income and savings. We, on the other hand, bought used furniture. We looked in, I think they called it the Pepper Pot in those days, newspaper. And we lived fortunately, we lived close to Beverly Hills, so we were able to get nice furniture at really a low price. And some of the people that we came in contact with were, uh, how would I say it, in our corner as we were young, uh, married couple with a child, and they wanted to help us out. Of course, they wanted to get paid for their furniture, so we did get some really good furniture from Beverly Hills Estates at some really low prices. And I think what we bought was a dining room table and chairs, a sofa, and a coffee table. And I think it was two end tables or one end table. The couple that we bought it from, they were, retiring, and they really wanted to. They had a hutch that I wanted to buy, but it was a little bit beyond our budget. And they, they wanted to sell it to us, and they, of course, wanted us to have it because it was part of the set and blah blah blah. And had I bought that I would not have had enough money for the down payment on the house, so we didn't buy it. They called us back and said, "Do you want it? Do you want it?" And we said, "No, we don't think so. We're we're at our limit." And so, good thing we didn't buy it because we bought this house, a little cracker box house, 3 bedroom house in Reseda, California, which is, the low point. If you've watched, what was that movie called, The Karate Kid? Remember, he lived in Reseda. Well, Reseda at that time was surrounded by a lot of empty acreage. Now the whole town is all built up, but in those days, it was empty acreage and track homes here and there. So I paid, I think, $23,000 for this house, and 5 years later, I bought that in '71. I think we sold it in '76 for $42,000 and bought a house in Canoga Park for $55,000 and financed it through Bank of America on a 20% down loan. We initially get the 3.5% down, or whatever it was, 2% or whatever it was in those days. It's 3.5% now. And so we traded up and bought a four bedroom house in Canoga Park with a swimming pool, and then that was in '76, and then in '81, 1981, we bought a house in Chatsworth, which was an upscale community in the San Fernando Valley. Uh, I paid $215,000 for that house, I believe, and we sold it about 7 years later for $315,000. So you can see how prices rose in those days. Now, the elements that caused those prices to rise was immigration. We had a lot of people coming in from Vietnam after the Vietnam War ended, and Southeast Asia. And today, we have, similar to today, we have a lot of people coming in from the Middle East, immigrating in. We have also people immigrating in from uh, below the southern border in a part of North America, which is Mexico, and then Central America, uh, and also some of South America, and also from the European areas. People come to the United States for a better life, and they come to California because of the weather and the amenities. Where California has beaches, it's a place you can go to the beach on one weekend, the snow on the next weekend. The weather is very good, the climate is good, and pay scales are good. One of the negatives that lenders look at in California is the wildfires. So, of course, your FHA qualified homes are going to be in the outskirts. At that time, it was the San Fernando Valley. Now it would be the Santa Clarita Valley and maybe the Antelope Valley. So the FHA loan rates at that time were around 25,000, 23,000. I think is what we paid for the house, and I think we paid maybe $1,000 as a down payment. Today, the limit in Los Angeles County, the FHA limits vary depending upon the county that you live in and the standard of living. In some of the less expensive counties, like in the southern region of the United States, the southern region of the United States, the loan limits can go down as far as 300 and something $1,000. In Los Angeles County, the loan limits are $798,000. In the Santa Clarita Valley, which is the next suburb outside of the San Fernando Valley, the average sales price of a home there today is $795,000. So at 3.5% down, that's $27,825. It seems like a lot of money for my time, but in today's money, that's not too bad. The average starting salary for a college graduate is around $50,000 to $60,000. If you take out your withholding, which is roughly about 20%, that means you'll have about a $4,000 a month net income. To get that $27,825 as a down payment, you would need to save about $2,318.75 per month for 12 months, and you would have that $27,000. That's roughly about 57% of your 58% of your net income. So whatever you can do to save that money in a year, you would be able to buy a what I call an FHA Cracker Box house. But don't worry, because if the same phenomenon repeats itself, and there's some information that says it may do that, it was immigration and speculation that caused the increase in housing prices in my day. It was roughly, at one point, it was roughly 2.5% per month appreciation. That's a lot of appreciation in the real estate market. And right now, because of the pandemic, there haven't been a lot of sales, as I read just recently, in the Santa Clarita Valley. The sales have been down. So sales price right now is $795. Just to give you an idea of how I realized, like I said, we paid $23,000 for the house. When I put it on the market, I decided I was going to try to sell it myself to avoid the real estate commission, and I put it on the market for $27,500. Whoa, the phone was ringing off the hook. 3-bedroom house for $27,500 in Reseda. Well, I made a mistake, so I took the property off the market. I put it back on the market for $35,000, and a realtor came by and said he could sell it for more. He was kind of a slick guy, but he tried to cheat me out of his real estate commission. But I was smart enough to recover the money from him. But in any event, he sold it for, I think, $42,000. So $23,000 house sold for $42,000 5 years later is pretty good appreciation. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen during your time, you as college graduates or young college kids, but it's a phenomenon that you might look forward to if you've watched the real estate market, watch the immigration rate, and watch the foreign immigration rate is one thing, and then the immigration rate from your state or into your state, whatever your state is. I was in California. We were educated, got our college degrees from Seattle University in Seattle, Washington, and then came back to California. The same thing happened in Washington during those times, this appreciation of real estate. That is my example of how you can overcome the racial wealth gap. You get in the market. You may face some racial prejudice, as we did. I remember the real estate broker. If you saw that video, I think it's video number 8, where Cory Booker's family went through some racial prejudice with a real estate broker. Our real estate broker was a little shocked, I should say, that we would come to the San Fernando Valley, which was a basically primarily white flight area from the city into the valley. But he also wanted to make money. So, the color barrier became the only thing that was important was green at that day. So anyway, there's your example, and there's how you can overcome the racial wealth gap because that equity that you accumulate over a period of time. Now, this period of time was 1971 to 1995. So that was, take that back, 1971 to 1991. I think it's a 20-year period. So that may be what you encounter. Your encounter may be longer or it may be shorter. It just depends upon the value of real estate. But it is 60% of the wealth of the average middle class family. So that's a big chunk. That's where I promote you should start to build your wealth gap. Also, while we were in school, my roommate, my fiance and his fiance were roommates, and we were roommates. His fiance came upon a $30,000 inheritance. One of her relatives passed away, an aunt or someone, and left her family. There was 4 children in her family, each worth $30,000. So she asked me, "What should we do with this money?" And I said, "Buy a house," and they did, and they made out pretty well. That was even before we graduated. So they bought a house right after graduation, and they made out pretty well. I think they sold that house and then built a house in Portland, Oregon. So that's it. That's what I have to say, and hopefully you'll be able to take advantage of that of those kinds of phenomena. I'm Larry Jackson, the writer, director, and creator of Overcoming American Ethnic and Racial Implicit Bias, and hope to see you in the program.